So take advantage of this great opportunity, and we're going to start here. Say your name and.
I probably should stand up because that probably would help.
Sure.
Okay. Do you think that Beyonce doesn't know exactly what feminism is enough, to sit down and to have a conversation, tell her what in her song she's doing wrong, or is it because she's acquiescing to the music industry's demands of her?
I don't think either of those things. I think she gave us a definition of feminism. She chose a definition. It's Chimamanda Adichie, Ngozi Adichie's definition. So look, she doesn't just say I'm a feminist. She puts a definition in the song. So one, I want to respect her creative labor. That she went, and what she said is that she was looking on YouTube for definitions of feminism. And so I was like, let me see what happens if I type feminism into YouTube. Put an essay in the Shriver Report, a book that came out last year, about women and wage equality. It was just a couple paragraphs. It was very basic. But she made a stance about the problem of women being paid less than men. Right? So what I think is more important to say, I don't think Beyonce is doing feminism wrong. Because I think that there are a lot of ways to do feminism. Right? Part of the reason I have a problem with folks being so bothered by Beyonce's feminism is because everyone acts like feminism is that there's only radical feminism. There actually is liberal feminism too. And liberal feminism says, look, we don't want to tear down the system. We want to make the system more inclusive. We want people to have equality. And look, for our current lives, since nobody in here yet is fomenting the revolution, for our current lives, we are deeply indebted to liberal feminists who make sure that women can have access to abortions, that women can have access to birth control, that there is some discussion in terms of legislation about women in pay equality, that there is some discussion about women in maternity leave, that there is some discussion about women in sexual harassment. Like, there are actual things that the liberal feminist movement has done to make the quality of women's lives better, right? And so I think Beyonce's with them. She's not with the radical crew. She's not like, the system is really fucked up and like race, class, gender, intersex. But because here's the other thing. Beyonce would be a student in my Women's Studies 101 class.
Yeah.
She's not my feminist icon. I was a feminist before she was a feminist. And so were many of you, right? So she is not our feminist icon or our feminist leader, which is why I said we got to ask, maybe feminism is speaking to something she's trying to grapple with. Right? That when she married her husband, he was a big star. She was on the come up, and he's like 17 years older than her or something, or 13 years. Right? And so when you really begin to try to work out that kind of relationship, when you have lots of money and lots of power, you will be like, let me go read, let me see what this feminists talking about. Because you're being patriarchal. You might not know that word, but you know there's somebody talking crazy to you. Right? And her husband is jealous. Well documented jealous. Right? So she's like, I think my personal sense of this is that she's trying to figure some stuff out.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll say too is, after she claimed feminism, I've been a feminist for a while. And the women that, I got younger cousins and stuff, and they just be like, that's fine. You do that, whatever. We don't care. They called me. I had two cousins to call and be like, I would like to start learning about feminism. Where should I start? And that was directly related to Beyonce talking about it. Now, I've been talking about it forever, and I was like, what's she got done? That's cool, I'll get you just right. So they won't come out articulating feminism like Beyonce does, but she opened up a conversation.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Right? So, yeah.
So on that topic, I actually read on your blog what you had to say about Bell Hooks calling Beyonce a terrorist, but I kind of want to hear it in a formal setting, and if we could kind of discuss that, because I've been going back and forth on those views, and especially because Bell Hooks is also a person of color, and it really surprised me, so I'm wondering if that shocked you, and if you could talk a little about what you think about that.
Yeah, look, none of us who do Black feminist pop culture work can be in a room without Bell Hooks. She's the person that, really created this set of possibilities. I think she was just wrong, I think she was wrong, and I think two things about it. I think that the way in which she said it, so what was happening was Bell Hooks was on a panel with Janet Mock, a trans Black woman who was the host over at MSNBC. And Janet was saying that listening to Beyonce, Janet is probably 30, so she's a couple years younger than Beyonce. So she said when she was a high school student, she listened to Beyonce as she was coming into her own sense of womanhood as a trans black woman until that Beyonce and Janet Jackson, whom she named herself after when she fully transitioned, were folks who helped her to articulate a sense of black womanhood. And so Bell Hooks responds to her personal narrative about Beyonce helping her to craft the notion of womanhood by calling Beyonce a terrorist. So I think that's deeply violent and disaffirming, right, to trans women, right? One. And two, Bell Hooks is also the person who told us to be so careful with language and discourse. So terrorists, just nah. Like, you ain't gotta like the sister, you ain't gotta agree with her project, but she not blowing up nobody, right? She not killing folks, she's slaying folks, but she not killing folks, right? And so it felt like hateration. The last thing it felt like was trying to hate on generational articulations of feminism. Right? Young women are like, let's think about our relationship to this term now. Because women of color are really quick to be on some, I don't identify as a feminist. And I'm like, okay, so you believe this, you believe this, you believe this. So you believe all the feminist things, you just don't want the label. Yeah. Right? I'm a label chick. I'm like, nope, mark my politics. Mark me by my politics. I don't have no problem. If I claim a politic enough to live it, then you can call me that. But I get why folks don't, and I don't make that the source of my battles, but I just felt like it was this generational policing, like, y'all don't do it like us second waivers did it, so something is wrong. I think there's something that's problematic about Beyonce. I was very turned up with her about Lettucey at the Grammys, because that performance of Precious Morgan was terrible. Really horrible. And the politics of, like, her not trying to make space for Lettucey to be on the stage, I didn't think was sister. And since she defines her feminism largely about her politics of sisterhood, I was like, that was a fail, right? But terrorist just seems too extreme, and so and Bell Hooks is provocative. She's very provocative, and so I think we have to ask what she's trying to provoke us to think about. So do I think that when Beyonce does odd things in beauty culture, like call herself, what does she call herself? African American, Creole, and Native American or something. See, I'm from Louisiana, and so are her people, and I'm like, you're just a black girl.
Right.
And so that need to, like, whatever that thing is she's doing, I'm like, what you talking about? That's a little. And that's not a knock to folks who actually have all these heritages, right? It is to say that having lived down south, I know that when black girls down south tell me they got some Indian in their family, they're doing something different than saying I have all of these, heritages that make up who I am. And so that is what that felt like to me. And I was like, girl, you're from Houston. And your people from New Orleans. And we all know about New Orleans colored people. Like, anyway, that's my Louisiana thing coming out. So it felt off. That then I think is a problem. But I don't think she just ain't a terrorist. And I think that black feminist identified women should be held to a higher standard in terms of how they think about what other black women are trying to do. Right? I don't think we get to be rhetorically and discursively violent to other sisters who are trying to make their way into the work that we've spent a lifetime saying will save your life. That feels like a contradiction to me. So I called it out. And people were very upset. You're not respecting your elders. It's like, I respect Professor Hooks. I just don't agree. Yes.
I want to ask for your opinion on two things.
Yes.
First, I just want your personal opinion on Missy Elliott.
Yeah.
And also on I don't know if you watched the event in NJ this past weekend.
No.
The Black Girls Rock with Michelle Obama.
So what happened? What do you guys say about?
I just wanted to see if take your ideas on Michelle Obama attending that and what she has done for feminism.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's any other opinion about Missy Elliott other than she's awesome, right? Missy Elliott is absolutely wonderful. I mean, she's a pioneer and really, just amazing. Like, really rises to genius levels in terms of her sense of production. And she's important because you don't actually know a lot of black women producers in hip hop. Not even just artists, but who can actually name black women producers? right? I mean, you pretty much can name them on like one hand. So she's very important in that regard. It was so funny when she performed at the Super Bowl and people were like, "Was it the Super Bowl?"
Yes.
And people were like, "Who is this Missy Elliott?" I was like, I be trying to believe in the young, but I don't understand. So I think she's awesome. And I mean, I think it's great that I saw some of the controversy about Michelle Obama. People were like, how dare she say black girls rock? Because she's a black girl.
Right.
And she's the mother of two black girls. And in a world where black girls get called slut for being baseball wonderkinds, right? And where black girls get called cunts when they get nominated for Oscars. I'm talking about Monet Davis, the baseball star, and Quinvene Wallace, the actor.
9-year-old.
Yeah. Like, that's the kind of stuff that happens to black girls, right? Quinvene gets nominated for an Oscar, The Onion calls her a cunt.
Yes.
She was 9.
9.
Right? Monet Davis gets a Disney movie and some baseball player in Pennsylvania tweets that she's a slut.
Yes.
She's 13. So I think that there's actually a really active need to affirm that black girls rock. Michelle Obama's interesting because, I really like Michelle. I think, I don't know if she would claim feminism. I think she matters for feminism, right? But the challenge has been that white feminists have said she's not a good feminist because she assumed the role of mom in chief. But see, what they forget is what happened to her before that when she was out on the trail being very vocal. She almost lost her husband in the presidential race because people called her angry and said, that she was not patriotic. So she played a role strategically. And two, the other thing black women have been saying is, look, when do we ever just get to stay home and take care of our kids? So the fact that she got an 8-year, not break, but opportunity to do that is not anti-feminist. And it's only anti-feminist if your feminism is white women, American, middle class centered, right? But if it takes into account other histories, I don't think you can come to those conclusions. So I think Michelle Obama's cool. I mean, look, sometimes she too engages in respectability politics. So when she's like, on the one hand, we don't need to be training our children to be rappers and ballers. And on the other hand, she's like, when asked if you could be anybody other than yourself, who would you be? She says, Beyonce. And I don't know. I mean, I agree with this response. And I'm like, what's up with this one? Right? Like, I can hear the whole, we need a broader universal possibility for black kids. But I don't agree that being like, all y'all just want to be rappers and ballers. They want to be superstars, and we have like 2 kinds of black superstars. So unless we get some other kind of black superstars, maybe now kids will be like, I want to be president because they can. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah. What else? Who else?
It's a student.
Yeah. I just wanted to know what your opinion is on just black women specifically being pitted against each other in hip hop and in just Hollywood in general, especially in Hollywood right now with the rise of so many different shows like Empire, Scandal. Because, you're seeing more black women on television, and now you're starting to see them more pitted against each other, and that's always been a thing in hip hop. Even like recently, there was like a Twitter thing between Azalea Banks and Erykah Badu. I don't know why that happened. But yes. But just like in general, your opinion on just seeing black women specifically.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that, like, if you're talking about reality television, I think that stuff is, like, terrible, most of it. I watch some of it, but I think most of it's terrible. But I don't think that black women in hip-hop need to play nice with each other. I don't, actually. I think that there's productive forms of competition and not productive forms. I think the problem with Azalea is that she routinely engages in unproductive forms, right? So we mostly know her for her Twitter beefs and not for her album, and that's a problem. Right, that she's not solely responsible for, but that she contributes to. But Erykah wasn't, keeping that beef going. Azalea started that, and Erykah finished it. It was great. Look, bring us all the black women shows. Bring us all of the shows, because here's the thing. We end this year. We were in last year. Yeah. But even in just my little lifespan on television, what I know is like black folks are like in for 5 years and out for 10. Absolutely, the 90s. Like I grew up watching black shows all the time. I was like, we got all kind of black shows. Then I looked up one day and I was like, what happened to all the black shows? Right? Because what networks do is they use black shows. So like so for instance, Fox with Empire. Fox emerges in the 90s and builds its capital as a network by putting on black shows. So Martin and Living Single and all those shows were on Fox. New York Undercover, shows like that were all on Fox. Then, once they built a base, got all this money, then they were like, we're going to shift over to mainstream format, white meaning white, right? And then, so when television fell off again, which it had been doing because of the internet, now they're like, well, we need, how we gonna reinvigorate? Get us some black shows. Because they know that black people always want to see ourselves on television. It's a tried and true method. They will put our shows on, they will build capital, they will get themselves out of a ditch, and then once that's done, just watch it. Just watch. Don't believe me, just watch. Okay, right here. Yes.
I have to ask you, but how do you feel about a black woman's portrayal in the reality show Love and Hip Hop? And more importantly, how do you feel about Nolan Scott, the creator, who is kind of viewed as a puppet master in the conflicts and differences?
Yeah, I don't watch the actors. I don't watch Love and Hip Hop. Some seasons watch Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. I hear a lot about Love and Hip Hop. Nolan has found her bread and butter. I think she might be selling her soul a little bit for it. It's just the worst kind of representation usually. Look, some of it's fun though. What's her name on Bravo? Kenya Moore. Real Housewives. Kenya's hilarious. Y'all know she is. She's a mess. She's a hot mess. But she's hilarious. So I think we gotta figure out I basically give myself like one reality show a season, and I'll watch that. But I can't watch too many of them. So just really though? Really, it's like I was really like into Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. I wrote on the CFC about how I saw some ratchet feminism in play there. The first season was real cool, and then Baby came out with a sex tape, and I was like, what? Shower rod and stuff. Like, shower rod. But yeah, like I have a lot of positive to say. I think the portrayals are really jacked up. I think we can say that. I think we gotta ask why we continue to watch though. There's something about the drama that's perhaps cathartic. And we watch even when we know better. It ain't just like the dregs of society watching. Like we watch too. We know better. But there's some kind of pleasure. And so I don't know how to hold that conversation other than to say, I hope that the rise of scripted shows will put some of this back in balance. We'll see. Yeah. Yes.
I wanted to ask you what your opinion is on two particular scenes about the shows that you mentioned earlier from
Hi, could you stand up, please, so we can see you?
One of them was when Olivia was in the island and her hair was all curly and kinky and everything, and then when she came back and it was like back to business, and her hair was like all straight and quote unquote beautiful. And then the same scene that something that's kind of parallel as well in How to Get Away with Murder, when the main character, it's like every time she goes to the courtroom and she looks flawless in her makeup and everything, and her hair looks amazing, and then you go back to that scene where she's taking her wig off, and how does that strike you? What do you think that means for representation of black women in television?
I think the scene with Annalise Keating and played by Viola Davis on How to Get Away with Murder is amazing. Because I think it's true to form. I think that black women professionally perform, which is not to say we're inauthentic, but is to say that when we are up and teaching, we're performing our professional selves. But there is a moment where you come home and you take off makeup and you take off the whole performance, and we haven't ever seen that on television. So I think it's an opportunity for a look into black women's interior lives, right? An acknowledgement that black women actually have interior lives and multiple selves, and that it's not just the self you get to see. It's that who we are professionally are finely crafted versions of ourselves that we want you to see, and that's political, and it's rooted in a history, and it's rooted in the fact that most institutions steeped in whiteness cannot be trusted to deal with our full selves, and that's just the reality. So I think that vulnerability and interiority is awesome. I think with Olivia, I mean, you know, folks have read a lot into like how the hair should. I mean, we talk on Twitter about whether the hair is laid or not, or like what's happening with the hair. I mean, look, I think if you on the beach, you on an island, well, who gonna press your hair or do your perm? I mean, you know, I think it was probably one of the more real moments because we did rip Shonda when like Olivia would be in these shower scenes and her hair would still be laid when she got out. It's like no black girl goes in the shower with a press or a perm uncovered. We don't do that because you pay a lot of money for your hair to look that way. And so you don't do that. Right? And if you do it because you're caught in the heat of passion or whatever, when you come out, your hair does not look like that. So we were like, what you doing, Shonda? You know better. So I do think the other thing that this points to, though, is the way that because Shonda is engaged on social media, she does hear the critiques, and we do get these subtle responses. You know? So folks were really like, what are the race politics of Scandal the first season? And I think what I see is that she was like, I gotta make this show stay. Then I can do all the things. I can show you black queer elders, you know, a recent episode where Marla Gibbs played one half of a lesbian couple, a black lesbian couple, right? So I can show you black queer representation. I can show you black women taking her makeup off on television. You know, I can show you black women doing the Black Lives Matter episode that we said here, right? But you can't do that if the show don't stay on. So I think there was a little bit of playing the game, and now Shonda's moving into a more overtly political stage. Okay, here and then I'll give you the last. Yes.
I was just curious on your thoughts. You mentioned that Bell Hooks calling Beyonce a terrorist was dangerous language and hateful, what have you. How is male hip hop artists using similar language to talk about something different? How is that not damaging and violent? Or, yeah, I mean, I think it is, but you were saying earlier how if a rapper's talking about raping a woman but the beat is hot, we're cool with it.
Yeah,
but if he's actually going on not raping.
No, I said exactly the opposite. Okay. I said, if a rapper is talking about raping a woman, that is when we draw the line.
Oh, okay.
I said we might skip over some bitches and hoes because I do think that calling a woman a bitch or a hoe is fundamentally different than calling her a terrorist, right? In this moment. I don't think calling her a bitch or a hoe is okay. I think it's sexist and misogynist and all of those things. I think what I'm saying to you is that it's complicated when we make negotiations and it's not a pure space. I think that the way that hip hop thinks about women is largely violent, disgusting. But there's more to hip hop than just than its lyrics, and I don't even want to be making it's an all about the beat kind of argument. I do think the beat is central, but what I'm interested in is how do women make space for themselves in a culture that is male-driven and misogynistic, where they don't have value. And so I'm saying that what I see women doing is making all kinds of negotiations to say that they are the beat of the movement, that they are the clock, that they are the thing that sets the time, right? And that is a radical and important shift and a place that we should look.
Are black men looking at that space at all in the way that you are? Is there any of that going on?
I don't think so. I think that black men are largely reveling in the fact that it's a male-centered space and it's very patriarchal, and they love it. But that's why I'm a feminist, because I don't ride with black men on that point. Right? So mine is, it's not an apologetic for hip hop, right? I call brothers out all the time. I mean, let me count the ways that I got rappers who are mad. Me and Talib, we beefing. Me and Lupe, we be like, you know? I've called them out on the CFC, and it has led to rifts in relationships, you know? So I don't call out the most misogynist ones because one, I'm not trying to listen to them, and two, they feel like lost causes. The ones who are conscious but say things like bitch bad, woman good, lady better. That's Lupe. Respectability. Right? Who are you to say that lady is better? I'm not trying to be a lady. No, I'm not trying to be a lady. Right? So even the conscious dudes I don't think get it right. I think they have a very limited universe of possibility.
You think his is coming out of being Muslim?
What?
Lupe?
No, it's coming out of him being black, and that's just how black folks think, whatever their religious orientation. There's a deep respectability politic in black communities that exceeds the bounds of religious orientation. That's just about saying, Black men have bought into the white supremacist narrative that black women are untrustworthy and hoochie mamas and sluts and so forth, right? And that, look, I think that I feel a space of contradiction. And that space of contradiction is, I don't think black men particularly value black women culturally or in the music. I don't actually think that. I think individual black men might within communities, but culturally and politically, where do we see it? Right? We've had like 9 trans women of color killed in 2015. We having a whole Black Lives Matter movement, and we had 1 march. Right? Every week we hear stories of black men killing black women, cisgender black women in domestic violence situations. And it hasn't occurred to brothers that they should have a march about violence done to black women. Right? So I'll call them out on that for sure. But it's also like the contradictory moment when Nicki Minaj does Anaconda, which is fine. And the founder of allhiphop.com writes a piece about how this is terrible because he has daughters and what are they seeing? And I'm like, where's the manifesto for all the dudes that called your kid a bitch and a hoe and talked about all the ways they want to fuck them and ruin, and in the most vile of ways, right? You don't have no manifesto for that, but you want to talk about Nicki saying that she shakes her ass real good? So what I'm trying to get at is, one, why is our impulse in the culture always to regulate women's bodies, right? And what does it mean to respect women's agency and to say, look, they're trying to find space. That space is not perfect. It's really, really complicated, actually. But see, at the point where I can't, so black men are misogynists, but they're not more misogynist than white men. They're not more misogynist than American culture. So then you got to ask, well, why do they emerge as the primary narrative that we can point to of the sort of horrors of misogyny? Right? And I do think that this is an interesting moment where some dudes are trying it. I don't think they always get it right. It's like Kendrick Lamar. I love K-Dot, thoughtful brother, but his album cover is a bunch of dudes sipping 40s on the White House lawn. So when you go look at the cover. So when you look at the cover, you don't see any women. Now there are women or folks who appear to be women if you look close enough, but all of them are hid by an arm, a stack of money is in their face, a 40 is in front of their face. And I'm like, even a conscious dude who's thoughtful can't see space for women in his liberatory project. Right? So I think they deserve to be called out for that. But I usually just be like, I can't really be studying what black dudes do because they disappoint. And that's not male bashing, right? Like, part of what I'm trying to say is, what I be saying to brothers is, so, we out on the front lines fighting for the cops not to shoot you down. I've marched, written, done all the things, and we'll continue. But we can't rely on you to show up to march, right? You buy into the worst narratives about who we are. Brothers often say, black women think we ain't shit. And I'm like, show me, where do we say it? Show me in culture. Where have we said it? Where are the movies that are premised on the idea that black men ain't shit? That black women wrote, directed, and produced? Right? Where are the songs premised on black men ain't shit? Right? Where are the television shows premised on black men ain't shit? But by contrast, I can name you a Tyler Perry, Steve Harvey, every kind of hip-hop artist, plenty of black male preachers, whose whole narrative is about how black women ain't shit. And that's why you ain't got nobody. Right? I will not get into it here because of time, but, I wrote a scathing critique of Tyler Perry, and he called me, it was so scathing.
Wow.
And I told him, I was like, you hate black women, let's talk about your movies. And we did, we talked.
Wow.
So, it ain't about I will call brothers out all day long. I also love them, right? And I will also fight to the death for them to be able to live. The challenge is, when we then do that, they ain't reciprocating. So it's a real conundrum. But I'm also really trying to think about, how do black women make a way out of no way? Right, in a culture where we've been pushed out, We've been pushed out of hip hop. I mean, you can name, I mean, you, not shit, not Iggy. Not Iggy. You can name Nicki and Azalea, this new chick coming up, Tink. You know, you got like 3 or 4 that might have a little bit of mainstream whatever. But that's not the hip hop I grew up with, and I just be trying to not be totally nostalgic, but there really has been a reduction. And so what do you do in a culture that you helped to build that pushed you out? And as a feminist scholar, I'm like, there are women here. We're always there. Even when folks say we aren't. We're always there. So what are the ways that we're there? And part of the argument in the longer project is you won't find women as MCs like that, but you will find them doing hip-hop inspired other kinds of music, neo soul, R&B. And so that if we want to have a more expansive picture about women creatives in the hip-hop generation, then we got to stop looking for them in rap. And so then if you look outside of rap proper, then you see a much more dynamic sort of set of articulations of black female subjectivity in relationship to hip hop. That's why I didn't spend a lot of time talking about Nicki. I like Nicki, I have a problem with her, but I'm trying to say we need a more expansive universe. Right. Okay,
That was actually my question. The article that he wrote about Nicki, that is actually my exact thing I was going to bring up because it's so hypocritical.
Yeah.
Because it's like, first of all, you write about all these things. You write about all these things that she's doing, yet you're the one who's encouraging it. And also, if someone is going to be doing that, at least it be her to do it to herself.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's right. You know, people are mad when black women shake their asses for their own selves. Yeah. Okay, y'all.
All right. Well, thank you. People, we're going to have some cookies and some drinks out there for after snack.